It was a beautiful day in the summer of 2002, but Herman Murrah couldn't help but be a little depressed. He knew his time was near. He by no means feared death, for he was ready to meet his maker, but he just wasn't through living yet. This was to be his last ride, and he knew it. He was on his way to the hospital to die, and there was no getting around it. His body was failing him on several fronts, but his spirit was as strong as ever. Herman had regrets, as all men do, but he had a lot to look back on with pride. In his short stint here on this earth, he had accomplished enough to be proud. He was leaving the place in better condition than it would have been had he not lived. That was, and is, all any of us can hope for. He had made a difference. His oldest son was driving on this fateful trip, and Herman asked him to drive slowly so he could have one last look at the swamp he loved so dearly. You see, Herman loved his wife and his 2 sons. He had also loved his job, and he was incredibly thankful that he did, because he realized that few men could truthfully say that. To him, his career had been more of a calling than a job. Several opportunities had presented themselves over the years that would have enabled Herman to make a lot more money than he was making. But none of those opportunities held the allure of his chosen career. Herman had been blessed with the opportunity to make his living in the swamp and on the river. He felt a quiet satisfaction that he had given back to the swamp as surely as the swamp had given to him. Herman Murrah's lifelong love affair had been with the Pascagoula River Swamp. Herman's love affair with the river and the swamp began as a child of Curtis, also known as Kurt, and Laura Murrah on the bank of the Pascagoula River. I say on the bank, but from time to time, during the spring floods, they would find themselves literally surrounded and engulfed by the river. The Murrah household's life and living revolved around that river. Kurt Murrah was a bit of a rascal. He was short of stature, and his head hadn't had the luxury of hair for about as long as he could remember. Having had very little formal education, Kurt was far from imposing in any physical or intellectual sort of way. He was, however, wise in the ways of the world and a determined sort of person. Nobody intimidated Curtis Andrew Murrah. Curtis made his living off the river and the swamp. Working at a regular job just wasn't for him. He worked hard and he played hard, but he just couldn't bear to punch a clock. Curtis Murrah was a master of building simple boats. The boats were made of cypress boards cut from logs he salvaged from the swamp or river or bought from some of his cronies.